My name is JJ. I'm from Oklahoma. Excited to be here. I've been at Center High School before doing a different program. Excited to be back.
Hi, this is Ken Futernick. I recently visited Central High School in Northern California, where about 100 students were participating in an all-day workshop called Breaking Down the Walls.
Our time together today is going to be about three things. It's going to be about respect, fun, and stories.
The day-long workshop I'm observing is being led by Jason Shadamsky, or JJ as he's called. Near the end of the day, JJ is conducting a powerful and emotional activity called Cross the Line.
Please cross the line if you are an only child. Please cross the line if someone has ever physically, mentally, or emotionally saved your life. Please cross the line if you have a friend or family member that suffers from anxiety.
A few weeks earlier, I interviewed JJ and several others, including an expert on social emotional learning, some students who have participated in some of these workshops, and a couple of school administrators who have seen the impact the workshops have had in their schools. A few weeks after doing those interviews, I had a chance to observe a workshop in person, and I got to see JJ leading it.
Please cross the line if when you are here at Center High School, you often feel lonely. Please cross the line if you have a hard time telling your friends and family what you really feel.
Let me just say this. I was knocked out by what I saw. In all my years as an educator, I've never seen a collection of high school students, many of whom didn't know each other at all beforehand, come together, share stories, laugh, celebrate, cry, and leave at the end of the day vowing to remain friends and to support one another. Whatever stereotypes I might have had about teenagers today, that they can be immature, self-centered, even callous at times, watching 100 of them participate in this day-long workshop with JJ as the facilitator absolutely shattered those stereotypes.
Please cross the line if you feel like you learned something about yourself during this activity. Please cross the line if you feel like you learned something about other people during this activity. Thank you. You can cross back.
Jason, just start by talking about breaking down the walls. Just an overview. What's its purpose, and what are the problems that you're trying to address in running these workshops around the country?
Well, a guy named Phil Boyd, who's done a lot of great work in the school cultural world, started breaking the walls about 30 years ago. And he saw a shirt that said, "It's hard to hate someone whose story you know." And really what breaking down the walls is just trying to help students hear and share stories, because it truly is hard to hate someone whose story you know. So if we can create time and space for these young humans to connect and give them opportunity to share their story and hear someone else's story, it's going to bring them a little closer together and a little tighter and make that campus feel different.
Okay, we're going to come back and talk about what actually happens. And this is not just like a 1 hour session, workshop. It actually goes on for any particular student for an entire day. And we're going to hear a lot more about how it happens and the walls that you're actually trying to address and the impact. But right now I want to bring in another person who's on with us. And that person is Alicia Rhea Hardlock, who is a professor at Rutgers University, and she's an expert in social emotional learning. Welcome, Alicia.
Hi, Ken. Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for having me as a part of your conversation today. I am a former middle school language arts teacher. I taught in New York City and Asbury Park, New Jersey. And while I was a teacher, I really came to appreciate the importance of both school climate and classroom climate and culture. I took that passion for school climate and culture into the work I do now at Rutgers University. I'm a project manager and a sociologist, and I work as part of the School Climate Transformation Project.
The program we're talking about today is designed to break down the walls that exist, not just among students, but between students and the adults in their lives. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about why those walls exist and the impact they have on students and student learning.
Absolutely. I am excited to learn more about strategies designed to build those relationships and not only self-awareness, but awareness and understanding of others through storytelling, understanding others' perspectives. That's all incredibly important. And while I'm not here today to endorse necessarily a particular provider or program, I think that research suggests that there is a huge benefit to an explicit focus on not only building student-to-student relationships, but supporting the school climate domain or condition for learning that relates to staff and how prepared they are to connect with, support, engage the students who are in front of them. I think this is a particularly challenging time in education, post-COVID, with the transition and the stress that staff have been under, changing conditions, transitions in leadership, as well as the changing composition of their schools. And for students coming into the building, I think that it's incredibly important that they feel seen, valued, affirmed, and supported by the adults that are in front of them. So it's a balance of recognizing some of the organizational factors, such as teachers and staff having leadership support, the resources they need, the training they need to help with addressing issues such as youth mental health or wellness, given the consideration of all of the factors in the broader world as well as in school that can impact that. But recognizing also that students are using technology in ways that are evolving, that are incredibly engaging, and staff are trying to make sure that they're kind of evolving with those needs and some of the challenges that come with that as well. So building, I think, an understanding of the experiences and perspectives of students not only helps them to better relate to each other, but helps them to relate to adults. And for those adults, I think to provide opportunities for students to give their perspectives, their opinions, to have choice in assignments, but also, again, to be to sense that they're seen and valued as the human that they are, with all of the characteristics, background, and experiences that they bring into the school building.
Alicia, thanks for that. I'm going to come back to you in a little bit after you hear a bit more about breaking down the walls to see what you think as a strategy for dealing with some of the kinds of things you were just talking about. And we're also going to come back to you to find out what it is that school leaders can do to create an environment where the walls don't get built up the way they often do. The kinds of things that school leaders could do to complement what happens when after breaking down the walls happens, or in some cases, if you haven't even had a workshop on breaking down the walls, what they can do to create environments that strengthen relationships among students and between students and adults. Jason, I suspect what Alicia's describing is pretty familiar. What would you add? What are you seeing are the contributing factors to these walls that exist today? And do you think the walls are up higher than they have been in the past?
I do, Ken. I'm over here as Alicia's talking. I'm nodding my head up and down, just in agreeing as she's speaking. And I do think the walls have actually gotten higher between people just in society in general. And then that manifests itself in our schools. And I started doing this work. I've been in education 26 years, but with breaking down the walls, I've been doing it for 8 years now. And I can tell you that even over time and coming out of COVID and the changes that happen in our country, that has created, I would say, bigger, stronger walls between students on a school campus. And so I think the calls we receive here at our office are schools going, man, they'll say we're seeing a lot of racism. We're seeing a lot of disconnect. Obviously, cell phones, there's been changes in policies coming up across the nation in regard to cell phones. Cell phones have created barriers for kids to connect as human beings. Yeah, even though they're more connected to the world on their cell phone, they're less connected to humans and in-person experiences. So we definitely have felt that over the last several years. And even just from a facilitation standpoint, when you're in a gym with kids, I would say, especially since the pandemic, it's amazing how many kids are very uncomfortable having a one-on-one conversation with another person. They just lack that skill set.
Do me a favor, look at the person on your right and tell that person good morning. Look to your left and say, what's up? If you have somebody sitting right in front of you, tap that person on the shoulder, say, I see you up there. If you have somebody behind you, turn around, look behind you, say, I see you hiding back there. I love it. Clap once, clap twice. So I love the back row people. They usually sit there for a reason. And when people turn and look at them, they have an option. They're like, do I let people stare at me or do I look at the wall? It's awesome to see people go like awkward. Love it.
We use the phrase simple things, not little things a lot in our work. And you go, that is such a simple thing to have a one-on-one conversation with another human being, but it's not a little thing. And those are things that we see that students are struggling with. And I think Alicia nailed all the reasons why. And education is not becoming easier. It's becoming more challenging all the time, it seems like. And I know for me personally, as I know Alicia mentioned student connections. One of the things that changed me as an educator, I believe all of us have experiences that change us, is I was at Bentonville High School in Arkansas as assistant principal, and we had a grant tracking students from their freshman year through graduation. And we were really trying to find out what happened to kids that were not making it to graduation, that were falling through the cracks, that ended up in alternative learning environments. And I went to the National Dropout Convention, and one of the sessions I was in shared a document from the CDC, and it was a summary research over 50 years. And it said the number one factor over 50 years of research that influences school success is family connectedness. And the second most influential factor is school connectedness. And I remember sitting that session going, man, that's pretty big. 50 years summary research, that's what it says. And I started just going like, well, we can't really control number one, right? We can't control how connected somebody is to their family, but we can impact how connected a student is to a school. And so that honestly really started on me a path as an administrator at the time, focusing more on how can we build these connections with kids, and not just with their school or with their teachers, but also how can we facilitate connections between students in a school. That's really what we do with Breaking Down the Walls. And I know teachers and administrators, when they listen to this, they'll understand this. I remember I'm old enough as an educator that I used to hand a stack of papers to one of my students and say, hey, go pass these out to everybody. And no matter what, I would always have a kid come up and go, hey, who's Alicia? Right. And I would go, oh, Alicia's back there. She's got a black, the third desk from the back, right-hand side, black top on. And they would go, okay, got it. And they'd go hand it to her. And that was in April. And I'm like, the same kids have been in the room from August to April and they don't know each other's names. Like, I feel like that should be a crime to let that happen, but it happens in classrooms across the United States. So what happens to your school if we go, how do we facilitate connections between kids? So when they see each other, maybe they know a name, face, story. To me, that helps the school become a little closer, a little tighter, and it makes it feel a little bit more like a home for students.
You know, I had the pleasure of speaking to a couple of students who have participated in these workshops. They're former high school students, and I want to play a couple clips for both of you to listen to, because I asked them the same question I just asked both of you. What is it that causes this disconnect? What causes the isolation and the anxiety that we read about, and if you're in schools, you see that are affecting in students? So the first one is Valerie Zuniga, and I'm going to play a clip from her, and then after that, I'm going to play another clip from a young woman named Samantha. So here's Valerie.
I think one thing that I haven't shared that I think is pretty important is like, yes, bullying happens across all ages, but it becomes incredibly harmful once you get to high school. Just because like the fact that like people have social media, like I've seen videos of like people recording like freshmen like within like their first week, recording them, making fun of them. It's just it's a whole giant mess.
So that is Valerie. Here's Samantha Vega, who also participated in this in the Fresno area in California several years ago.
High school was not a great experience for me growing up, especially the first half. I'd say freshman, sophomore year was really rough for me. I actually ended up transitioning into foster care the summer of my freshman going into sophomore year. I had a really rough home life. High school, I was very angry, especially freshman year. And I tell everybody that I speak to now, because I'm really good friends with a lot of people from high school. And when we initiate any conversation, when I first meet them again, I'd be like, you know what? Can I apologize? I was horrible to you. Can I just apologize really quick? And people, like I've spoken to a few, doing nails, people will text me, hey, can I book an appointment? And then I get a little nervous. I'm like, oh, I was not nice to her when I was having a bad day, because my home life was very abusive. So I'd come to school at like 7:30, 8 in the morning, feeling roughed up, tired because I didn't sleep. And then I'd snap at the teachers or I'd snap at friends. I think that children are really bad with each other. We're all very moody. With that moodiness comes snapping, attitude, all that good stuff that people talk about when they have teenagers. We're very emotional when we're that age. I think with that being said, when you are going through something at that age, you feel it so intensely because it's your first time feeling those emotions. You don't know how to regulate them.
Jason and Alicia, I just wonder if you have any comments about what you heard. They're two very different stories. Valerie talks about bullying and social media, and Samantha talks about coming to school, having lived in an abusive situation. She's ended up in foster care. These are conditions that the schools don't have any control over. But we're going to hear from them later about the impact that breaking down the walls had for them, which was significant. But you want to comment on what you heard from those students, Alicia?
I really appreciated Valerie and Samantha's reflection and self-awareness, and I think you can see the maturity that they're bringing to understanding the experience that they had and the behaviors they engaged in and saw when they were in school. It's possible that while they were in school, nobody asked them necessarily to kind of bring those feelings and experiences to the fore, to unpack them at the time and think about what that meant relative to the type of experience they want in school, and the way that they would like to be treated and to treat others. And when I hear some of the things that the students were mentioning, it reminds me that building competencies, developing self-awareness, being able to understand your relationship with others and how your actions impact them is so important for adolescents, so that they can see and speak to and address the things that the students brought up retrospectively while they are students, and with the support of staff who have also developed and modeled and enacted those behaviors too.
Jason, what were your thoughts as you listened to the students talking about the challenges that they face both at home, that they bring to school, but also the kinds of things that happen in school that create these walls?
Well, with Valerie, like when she's speaking about bullying, and I think that that's something, when you have a group of people, there's obviously going to be dynamics and behaviors, and especially when we're talking about adolescent students that are developing, there's going to be behaviors and dynamics that come along with that. And so bullying is one of them. And I'm somebody that, as a former administrator, people would always come to you and go, oh, there's bullying happening. Sometimes it's not always bullying. And I think Alicia hit on that as well. It's just these, student interpersonal behaviors that can be negative also that you put in that category. And that kind of goes back to what we do at Breaking the Walls. Is it's hard to hate somebody whose story if students have a name-faced story, it's going to be harder for them to bully somebody. It's going to be harder for them to have a negative interaction with somebody if they know a little bit about them. And the cell phone, and I think this is what we see in our work for sure, is as the use of cell phones has increased, it's way easier for young humans now to hop on a cell phone and make a negative comment or video somebody or post something, because it's very impersonal to do it through your cell phone. And that's created more issues on a campus, because we all know, it's happening on a cell phone, but it's going to show up tomorrow when people hit campus. People are going to talk about it. They're going to repost about it. They're going to comment about it. People are going to know about it. And so those are issues that are just the nature of where we are as a world and as a society and with young people. So as I heard Valerie talk about the bullying, I'm like, yeah, that's what happens because you have a group of people young developing on a campus. And I think Samantha, her story was definitely one we hear a lot in schools about students saying, what's hard for me. One of the things we talk about at Breaking the Walls, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, is we give kids the chance to talk about what's something that can make school and life hard for people and what's something that makes school and life hard for you. And I think both young ladies gave examples of that. Valerie's talking about here's something that makes school hard is showing up in the bullying and the negative interpersonal interactions. And I think Samantha's telling the story of the things that make school hard for me is I was in foster care and I didn't have a great home life. And then she's trying to come to school and she said she's being rude and mean to adults and kids and stuff like that. But that's a result of what's going on in her life. And then she's trying to show up and focus on school. And so I think both ladies gave examples of things that can happen in life that can make school and life hard for them and for other people.
Yeah, I was struck by a couple things that you said. One, this idea, and you started off in really the premise of breaking down the walls is it's hard to hate someone if you don't know their story. There was a guy named Daryl Davis that I interviewed, a black man, musician, and he encountered some people in his work many years ago who came up to him that were interested in his music. And it turned out the first one he met got to know this white guy who's a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And rather than being repulsed by him and saying, I don't want anything to do with you, he engaged with him and listened to him. And at one point asked a question that's very similar to what you said, Jason. How is it that you can hate me without knowing who I am? And the man had no answer for it. Later, this guy that he met actually hands over his robes and his hood and says, I want nothing to do with that hate ideology anymore. So that's a really powerful story. But what I'm learning about breaking down the walls is that happens with hundreds of kids in one form or another, is they realize that when they get to know their classmates better, they stop hating them or they stop finding reason to bully them. And they don't want to be bullied themselves. And something really profound happens over the course of the day. So now what I'd like to do is to shift and give our listeners a sense of what actually happens in these workshops, because I think people listening there says, it's still a mystery to me. I don't really understand. So if you would, Jason, talk about, when you show up at a high school and you're going to do this, just talk about how this unfolds and especially what happens on day one with the assembly, and talk a little bit about something I'm intrigued by, which is, the use of students to help facilitate some of the activities. And after that, I'm going to play a little sound from one of your trainers, this guy named Mike Walsh, who's going to talk a little bit about the specifics of what happens early in the day on one of these workshops.
Yeah, I think something that when I think about breaking the walls, one of the foundational pieces of breaking the walls is conversation creates care. And so one of the main things we're trying to do is create time and space for conversation between people, because that's going to create care. And Ken, you hit on this. We actually train some student leaders to facilitate part of our workshop. So I'll give you kind of the short version of what a day, I'll use actually a couple of days. When we go to a high school, the first day, depending on if the school wants to do a whole school assembly or not, we might do a whole school assembly. We want every kid on campus to hear the message of breaking down the walls, because not all kids participate in our workshops. I'll share more about that in a second. So we might do an assembly. Some schools like to do assemblies, some schools do not. And then we do a student leader training. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. When we go to a campus, we'll be there for 2 to 5 days, usually really 3 to 5 days. So we might do a training day is typically an assembly and a 3-hour training with some student leaders. And then we'll do a series of workshops. So we typically do a minimum of 2 workshop days. And a workshop day is 6 hours with 25 student leaders and 175 student participants and a minimum of 4 staff. So when you think about a student leader training day, if we're doing 2 workshop days, we're going to have to use 50 student leaders. So on that first day after an assembly, we will train 50 student leaders for 3 hours on their role for a Breaking Down the Walls workshop. And our goal is, we believe, one of our speakers named Stu Cave, who's amazing, and really his assembly is built on little elephants need big elephants. And I don't want to share the story he uses to demonstrate that, but essentially what it means is, how did a baby elephant really learn how to behave? They learned by watching the big elephants behave. And we believe that's true on a school campus as well. Your younger students are going to learn from the older students by watching them interacting with them. So we train some student leaders on day one. And then on day two, let's say a first workshop day, it's a 6-hour workshop, 200 kids, 25 leaders, 175 participants, and a minimum of 4 staff. And the flow of the day, I know you're going to play a clip from Mike Walsh, is really the flow of the day is a lot of conversation. In the beginning, we're doing lots of one-on-one conversations. We're giving kids a chance to talk to 5 to 7 to 8 to 9 kids in the morning session. We use a philosophy called play, trust, learn. You put people together, you play a really simple game that takes maybe a minute, and then you get them give an opportunity to talk, to share. Conversation creates care, and then they're willing to learn and grow together. And so the morning is just about conversation. And then we do put them in groups right before lunchtime. And those student leaders lead 45 minutes of activities in a group. And to give you a little more insight, the end of the day, there's some very serious conversation. So this 45 minutes of time with a student leader, number one, it's putting a big elephant with some little elephants. Number two, we structure it because we want kids to learn names and faces and stories in that group time. But we also want them to get to a place where they're able to have really healthy conversation as a group for the end of the day. So the beginning of the group time is more active, moving, learning names. The end of the group time is very conversational, sitting down a little slower. We feed kids lunch. We'll do some fun stuff after lunch just to get some energy back. And then we do we call it a red light activity. It's kind of a little serious activity called Cross the Line. It's a way for students to share the story of their life just by moving their body. And so at the beginning of the day, we usually say Breaking Down the Walls is about 3 things: respect, fun, and stories. And the story component is the protein part of the day. So we do an activity where students line up, we say a statement, and they can choose to answer yes, they can choose to answer no, they can also choose not to answer. We always are very clear, it's your choice whether you answer something or not. But it can be something like, please cross the line if you have a driver's license. And that means kids just step out to the middle of the gym if they have a driver's license. But we also ask some questions that I would say are a little deeper. We'll ask a question like, please cross the line if you have a parent that is deceased. And we'll have some kids and some adults step out to the middle on that question as well. And then that activity, we say simple things, not little things. It's a simple thing, but not a little thing. It can be very powerful. And then after that activity, we actually go back to the small groups. And this is where really it's like the highlight of the day is those student leaders facilitate conversation in groups about that activity. And we talk about, why did we do it today? What were some things that can make school and life hard for students? And then what's something that makes school and life hard for you? And we heard from Valerie and Samantha earlier, and they gave great examples of that. Those are conversations students would have in a group of, hey, like, school's hard for me because I've been in some foster care and bounced around a little bit, and I find myself sometimes snapping at teachers. Somebody else could say, school's hard for me because the social media impact and the negative behaviors between students makes it hard for me to get anxious about those. Those are the conversations students have in groups. And then we eventually bring those small groups back together in a large group. We have those same conversations in a large group. And we end with something really cool called acknowledgement. So students can stand up and just say thank you to somebody in the room. Thank you to a friend for being there for them when they needed it. Thank you to a teacher for being an amazing human in their life. Sometimes we have apologies. And then we end the day with something really unique and cool. Kids get to write thank you notes on stickers and go deliver them to other students in the room. So students walk out of the room with stickers all over their shirt of thank you notes. And then that's just day one. So the next day, we'll have another 175 student participants and 25 leaders. If we do a day 3 and a day 4, it's the same formula. And our goal is just, can we get a critical mass of kids on the campus to be more connected, to feel like they belong, to have empathy for other people, and just recognize it's hard to hate somebody whose story you know.
So we're going to come back in a little bit and talk about the impact this has. And I've talked to some school administrators. We're going to hear from them briefly, and we're going to hear from Samantha and Valerie again briefly about the impact. And then one of your trainers, who we're going to hear from now about what actually happens, is going to share a story about impact on one particular student, and really a quite powerful story. But we're going to hear now from a guy named Mike Walsh, who I had a chance to interview and have him talk about his work as a trainer and what he does. And I think this will really give a sense to listeners of what happens, at least in the early part of the day. Here's Mike Walsh.
At the beginning of the program, I always tell them, the premise of the story, by the way, is that it's hard to hate someone when you know their story. And what I always tell the kids is, look, by the end of the day, you're going to know why you love someone. It's hard to hate somebody, but I'm going to tell you, it's easy to love them too. And so they kind of give me that look because I just said the love word, right? And they're like, oh, dear Lord, it's going to be one of those days. They're rolling their eyes and they're waiting for me to do some touchy-feely, I'm going to motivate you and inspire. None of that. I want you guys talking to each other. And so I try and get them out of the bleachers, like 150 to 250 students, get them out of the bleachers and get them talking to each other. But it's not the kind of talk that they expect. We play. Why? Because play is fun. Why not? We're going to be in here talking all day. Maybe we should have some fun, all right? And so we just do some of those silly games. We just play. And then as you're in the middle of playing, all right, talk to each other, and I will give you the subject. One of the simple activities I do is I say, so everybody, here's what I'm going to do. I've got Ken as my volunteer. Ken, please stand. And you'll stand up. We've got 150, 250 kids sitting on the gym, on the basketball court. And I go, Ken, you and I are going to teach everybody how to get to know each other. So I get you with someone you're not very familiar with. And I just say, all right, Ken, so here's what's it's going to work. I'm going to tell you one thing about me, and you're going to tell me one thing about you. And then I go, you go, I go, you go. And I'll show you how it works. I live in Oroville, California. And then you would respond with whatever. And then I go to my next response is, hey, I have one younger brother. And then you tell me about your family. Or you tell me about something completely different. And we just keep going back and forth. So I just tell the kids, all right, that's it. And what happens is the first time, it's a little awkward. I watch, and kids are struggling. I only do it for 1 minute. And then I do a couple other things with it. We laugh, we giggle, and I go, all right, how many of you just survived talking to a stranger? All the hands go up. All right, we now know you're going to survive, so we're going to try it one more time. And immediately that reflex of, oh, I got to go talk to somebody I don't know. I'll die. They always have that moment. And I go, all right, so one of you whoever's having the next birthday, raise your hand. Congratulations, stand, rise, go find a new partner. They struggle. And I always have the teachers with me, right? And because it's a reflex of, I'm nervous. I'm going to go talk to someone. And you know what that nervousness is all about? Someone's going to judge me because I don't say the right thing. And again, how do we move away from judgment? So they go, and what will always seems to happen, that second time, this I go, you go, I'm no longer scared. I know what it's like. I've experienced it. Oh, so that's what it means to connect with somebody? Okay, this is easy. And they get into it, and pretty soon I'm trying to stop them, but they're still asking, oh, no, we just need 10 seconds, 10 seconds. Oh my God, really? And kids start to lean in and they're excited. And then I'll go, hang on, I'm going to give you a bonus. Because the first time, 1 minute, it was like pulling teeth. The second time I go, I'm going to give you a bonus. Each of you now get 45 seconds to be your favorite Dr. Oprah or Dr. Phil, whoever your favorite is, and you're going to interview your partner, and you got 45 seconds to ask them all the questions that you really want to ask them. And I see kids all of a sudden who are scared to talk. They are leaning in with whatever they can use as a microphone. And they're leaning and they'll put the phone, and all of a sudden they're engaging, they're laughing, they're having a good time. And at the end of the day, because they just keep finding more and more things they have in common, keep sliding more and more into conversation, they end up having their new best friend that they never want to leave. They are just super tight. I can't get them to separate. And all of a sudden, this love thing, at the end of the day, I always ask them, how many of you remember back when this started morning, 5 hours ago when I said you'll learn to love people? How many of you, because they spend a lot of time in a small group of about 10, how many of you love the people in your group a whole lot more than you did when you first got in the room? Every hand shoots up. And they're in the bleachers hugging on each other, and they're super tight together. And kids will stand up and say and share from their heart, and kids will lock in and pay attention. And they will applaud, and they will support. And the student that morning, 5 hours earlier, who wouldn't say a word in front of anyone, because I don't want to be judged, they now talk about, we have to be better human beings to each other. We have to stop judging. I just need to be kind. I just need to be loving. Everybody's going through something. They start making those discoveries on their own. And once again, I've disappeared off to the side, and I've just shared with them how they're going to do that process. But at the end of the day, their love for each other goes through the roof.
So, Jason, I want you to react first, and Alicia, I'll come to you just to get your impressions on what you heard. But what does that make you think about, Jason?
Well, I mean, it just brings a smile to my face. Mike Walsh is an amazing human being who's done this for a long time, breaking down the walls. And if you're in the room with Mike, watching him do breaking down the walls, he just described the experience perfectly. It's amazing to watch a room of kids come in unsure, a little nervous, scared, anxious. And then when they walk out 6 hours later, they feel connected, they're smiling, they're hugging, they're applauding. Man, it just makes me smile, fills my heart, just
Yeah,
listening to Mike talk about that experience. Yep.
yeah. I just really wanted to play that clip because it really shows the energy that he brings to it as a facilitator. But he gets so excited, and as you'll hear in a minute, he's going to share a story about the impact as we transition to that part of the conversation on one student. And Mike himself gets pretty emotional in telling the story. But Alicia, what did you think about Mike's description of what happens during a breaking down the walls session?
From Mike's description, it sounds like such a moving and meaningful opportunity for students, and something that truly is a memorable, pinnacle of an experience that they have as part of their schooling. One of the things that he described really resonated in terms of just getting over the initial awkwardness of engaging in this type of play. And it's a playful experience, but one that does have a very structured, intentional outcome, which is to build that awareness of others and build understanding and acceptance and affirmation across differences. I have two kids, one's in kindergarten and one is in fourth grade. And even between those two grades, I think there are opportunities as kids are younger, whether it's morning meetings or other things that they do in the classroom where the kids, it's normal and exciting for them to share and to hear each other, and you don't have to encounter that awkwardness. And so identifying, when does it happen? When does the shift happen? There's a developmental piece of it for kids naturally where they are viewing the opinions of their peers as being so important. But I think in the structure of schooling, there's also a shift away from, the morning meetings, the read alouds, the conversations that do focus explicitly on building social and emotional skills as well as that connection to others. And of course, part of that is the increasing academic demands and the necessity to be able to perform academically. But what is so critical is that as we look across the spectrum of all of the grades of schooling, kids do need these opportunities to engage with each other and build those social and emotional skills to better understand, what are the norms in this community, and are they supporting everyone? How am I feeling, and how do I play a role as a member of the community, as a leader potentially in the community, in shifting that so that having those deeper conversations and getting to know one another is just part of everyday life and the way we do school and the way that we build and sustain a really strong environment for everyone.
And I'm going to come back to you in a little bit, Alicia, to have you talk about some things that educators can do in schools to create an environment that keeps the walls broken down, because many people listening to this won't have the benefit of having had a breaking down the walls workshop, or for those listening that may have a breaking down the walls workshop, what are the things we can do in the school to sustain that effort, to avoid inadvertently allowing the walls to get built up again. So, but before we do that, we're going to sort of shift into the impact. And I'm going to go back to Mike Walsh, who shared this story about one student who was in one of his workshops. And I'm going to play that for you now, and then I'll have you react to it. And then we'll hear from Valerie again, who talks about the impact that breaking down the walls had on her. So here's Mike Walsh again, one of the Breaking Down the Walls trainers.
I'll tell you, I had this one young man. He had this really angry look on his face. This was in Southern Cal. And he's got this angry look on his face. I watch him as he's coming through the door. We've got music playing, and we're just welcoming everybody in. It's festive. We haven't even gotten started yet. Kids are getting their name tag, figuring out where to sit, put their backpacks down. And I'm just standing off to the side talking to a couple of my students who are group leaders. Now, those group leaders are running everything, and they're just checking with me to make sure they're in the right spaces and doing their work. I see this young man come in, and he just has this angry look on his face. And I'm trying to figure out, I wonder what's going on. All right, I'll keep an eye on him because he just doesn't look like he wants to be here. I'm already judging. I'm already making up a story. I don't know the young man yet, but I'm judging, I'm making up the story, and I'm trying to catch myself in that moment. All right, I'll just keep an eye. He's going to be fine. And I watch him throughout the day, and every now and then a smile starts to come across, and then that look again. So we go through the whole day. We're done, and there's a part where the day is incredibly vulnerable, and kids are sharing some things that they have never shared before. And so we wrap up the day, and I give them the expectations for here's how you explain your day. And I always say, hey, what was the purpose of the day? You don't need me to tell you. You don't need another old person telling you what you were supposed to learn today. I'm going to turn it over to you. You guys, what was it you're supposed to learn today? What did you get, and how is this supposed to make things better? And then I go sit all the way off to the side, out of the way, preparing for how we're going to finish for the last 15 minutes. And that young man was one of the people that stood up. And I looked over, and he said, I know a lot of people see this angry look on my face and folks wonder what's going on. He says, I'll be honest with you. About a year ago, I was walking home from school with my best friend. He got shot and killed right in front of me. I haven't known what to do with my anger. And I just thought, whoa, that explains a lot. And then, Ken, what he did that I will never forget, I won't allow myself to forget it. He looked at everybody in the room and he said, if any of you ever need to talk to somebody because of what's going on in your life, if you see me walking across this campus, you pull me aside and I will sit, and I don't care what you got, what's going on. I will sit and I will cut class and I will just listen to you. And I just thought, with everything he's gone through, he still has this desire to make sure no one else suffers in silence the way he has for that entire school year. And I just think we have to be better about understanding these kids. They've got stuff going on in their lives.
What a powerful story. Jason, your thoughts about what you just heard?
Yeah, those are the moments at breaking down the walls. It's why we do the work, honestly. And I know Mike probably has a million of those, and the people on our team get to hear those every day that we're in a gym. And that's the moment that is school that all of a sudden that the kids in the room understand that kid speaking way differently. They look at them differently. And it doesn't mean they're going to be best friends with that kid, but maybe they'll be friendlier to that kid. And again, it comes back to it's hard to hate somebody whose story you know. And those are the moments that the whole day is built to create, honestly, at the end. So love hearing that story. I've heard Mike tell that story before, and it always gets you.
Amazing to me, Jason, that over the course of a few hours where, you or Mike or any of your other trainers start with a really simple question like you go, I go, and I'm from, Fresno, California, I'm from Minneapolis, wherever it is that I'm from. And these are really simple things, but we're talking with people that maybe we've never spoken to. And it goes from that to this angry student who becomes so vulnerable, he's willing to share this incredibly painful experience from his life. And then not only does he do that, but he offers to be the person that will listen to others. None of that would have happened if they hadn't been given the opportunity to be vulnerable and for him to see that, I've been hurt, but I can also help you, other students. It's this empathy thing. I can be there for you. It just blew me away. Alicia, just a quick thought from you about Mike's story.
Sure, it was a very powerful story, and it certainly begs the question of how schools can design and create environments where students are not suffering in silence, and no one is suffering in silence, whether it's staff or families as well. And I think a big piece of that, ensuring that needs are met at different levels is when schools go into the work with a vision for what kind of school environment they want to support, that they want students and staff to walk into every day. And then to think about, from a multi-tiered perspective, what are the things that we need to have in place? And how do we understand the areas in which we're already very strong and we have a lot of resources and a lot of enablers? And what are those specific areas at a school level where we know we have constraints, barriers, and needs that need to be addressed for most of our students or all of our students in some cases.
And I'll come back to you and see if you have a few more strategies or recommendations for school leaders about things they can do to keep the walls low and to respond to students like the one that we just heard Mike Walsh talk about. I'm going to play a clip now from Valerie, who we heard from earlier, who talked about bullying and what an impact that had and how difficult it was to deal with the bullying that seems to be pretty common in schools. She's now going to talk about the effect that breaking down the walls had on her life. Here's Valerie again.
I know me personally, the impact it had on me. I definitely cried during Breaking Down the Walls. I cried. Everyone cried. And for me, at least, there's two parts to it. One, like the first part, I'm being vulnerable right now. I'm sharing things that I have never shared with anyone else in my life before. And B, everyone else knows how I feel too. I am not alone. And so seeing that other people also understand you, it's it's incredible. And everyone crying wasn't anything negative per se, because everyone just like went around and hugged each other. Like all of our friends just started hugging each other. It wasn't a bad thing. Yeah, it doesn't feel good to cry, or maybe it does feel good to cry, depending on the person. Some people have been holding in those tears for a long time. Men usually didn't really cry because they were raised in households where they were taught not to cry, and even the guys were crying. And truly, it like Breaking Down the Walls creates a space where you can do those things. But at Breaking Down the Walls, when you cry, everyone else is crying with you. Everyone else is there with you. You're not alone.
When I heard her say that, I was picturing what, people coming in and moaning and groaning and, what are we doing? Is this going to be a kumbaya? And I don't, some inspirational thing. And Mike says, no, we're just going to have you talk with each other. And then at the end of the day, you hear the story about Mike, talking about this angry student. These are adolescents, young men and women who were crying, painful, although maybe it actually felt good to cry. But is that a common occurrence, Jason, at the end of the day, that you see this kind of thing happening?
Well, there can be emotion in the day, and I think it's because as humans, we have a tendency to keep things in and push them down to protect ourselves. We build up a wall to protect ourselves. And so part of the day is getting kids to a place where they can share part of their story and hear other people's stories. And that can include some things that do evoke emotion in humans. I think during Cross the Line, I use that example of, cross the line if you have a parent that is deceased. I even ask a question typically about, please cross the line if you often feel lonely when you're here at school. And I'm going to say typically 60% of the room will cross the line on that question. And even just showing up every day in a school of 2,000 kids feeling lonely most of the time you're there can evoke emotion in a kid. But they also see over half the room feels the same way. And I love when she said, I'm not alone. I love hearing that, because really that's what we're trying to get them to a place in the day where they go, man, I'm not alone. What I experience is human experiences. And they recognize that some of their staff have been through the same things. There's other students been through the same things. And and it's okay because it's part of being human, and I'm not alone in this. And I think that's really powerful if kids get to that place. And there can be emotion. And I always tell people, look, everybody handles emotion differently. Some people don't show it at all physically. You won't see a tear in their eye. You won't see them. Some people show a lot. They'll have a lot of tears. I said, but that's just the way we're built. We're just built different. And so everybody's processing, everybody's thinking, but the goal is the same. At the end of the day, we're just trying to make a school better by getting a lot of people to change a little bit. Schools don't get better when one person changes a lot. They get better when a lot of people change a little bit. And that's really where we're trying to get students to a place where they're like, hey, I want to change a little bit and just be a little bit better me when I show up here tomorrow. That's it.
Yeah, I can see why people would react and say, emotionally, it sounded like Valerie had wasn't sure quite how to describe the emotion. On the one hand, I'm not alone, and she was crying like that was sort of liberating to discover that, but also she's feeling alone and got to express that, and that's painful, but it was both sad and liberating at the same time. So one of the things that I really wanted to know, and I know when I spoke to you, Alicia, about this, is what's the impact on the whole school, and does this have a lasting impact? And so I thought I would speak to some administrators in schools where this has happened and say, how does school climate at your school, how is it affected over time? And I want to play a couple of short clips from a couple of administrators. Here's the first one.
My name is Pete Tutunci, and I'm the activities director at Nevada Union High School. And I've been in that position for 14 years now, and I've been working with the Breaking Down the Walls program off and on throughout that time. I have a lot of students and even staff members come back to me and say, hey, it was really cool that we did that program. I feel a difference out on campus. And when I ask them, well, that's great, what do you mean? They say, well, I don't know, it just feels different, and when you walk around on campus after we do the Breaking Down the Walls program, what you can actually notice visually is that the 1,000-mile stare goes away. Oftentimes you get people and even staff walking down the hallways and they've got a purpose or something they're trying to get to or something they're trying to avoid, and they're looking way ahead of them, or they're looking at their device or whatever it is they have going on. And after Breaking Down the Walls happens, you see people looking around. You see people looking to make eye contact with the person they just connected with at the event and waving and nodding and maybe running over and connecting and having a conversation more than you'd ever see before. And so really that's what it does, is it inspires everyone on campus to continue to solidify those relationships and grow in those relationships, because that's what builds the culture that we want to have on campus. It's the kind of thing that creates the campus where people don't want to leave at the end of the day, or they can't wait to come back the next day and see everybody again. It's really, really powerful.
And so now I'm going to play one more short clip from another administrator. This is an administrator who worked at the school where Samantha and Valerie went to school. So she knows about them and their stories. But here's another administrator talking about the impact in her school district.
Okay, my name is Debbie Hawkins. My official title is I'm the campus culture manager in Fresno Unified. Breaking Down the Walls is always when you present it to teachers and you're talking about kids missing days of class, hours of instruction, right? We're here to produce college-bound students. So yes, they need to be in class, and there is nothing's free, right? But what you invest your dollars in is also the outcome you want. So when people talk about the investment of time and money into this one-day program, I always want to take them back to the ideology of you got to start slow to go fast, and no kid's going to learn from you unless they know you care about them. I mean, the Rita Pearson TED Talk, which I believe is famous in education now, is everyone needs to rewatch that. Like, no kid is going to do well in any piece of education unless there is a significant relationship with an adult and they know without a shadow of a doubt that an adult in that institution cares about them. And once they have that down, it is statistically proven that a kid launches from that moment on. So the ideology of breaking down the walls and that they can be in space with teachers to get that one solid adult relationship is proven. And the idea that kids' connectedness improves their school attendance is also just a fact.
So one of the things I was struck by with what Debbie Hawkins said is that it seems to break down the walls between students and adults, not just between students. And Jason, talk a little bit about how that happens. And then Alicia, I want you to talk a little bit about why and how relationships between students and adults can be strengthened, not just through breaking down the walls, but through other ways that you might be able to recommend to people listening.
When we go to a school, we tell the school and the adults that are in the workshops, we say, participate just like a student. Do everything the students are doing. And it's amazing how often we'll have, especially principals, administrators go, we need every teacher to go through this program because they get to meet kids they've never spoken with in their life. They get to hear stories about kids that walk the halls of their school. A lot of times, I think Valerie was talking about being emotional. It's the teachers when we do that cross the line activity and they see what kids in their campus are going through and things that they never even knew about some of their own students. It can be pretty emotional, but at the same time, that helps the staff go like sometimes I was a chemistry teacher. I was a pre-AP chemistry teacher. So I have the kids that are pretty focused on class. And I feel like I was a pretty solid chemistry teacher, but I would forget sometimes that they're not just coming to my class all day long. They have 5 other classes. Some of them have jobs, they have sports, they have arts, they have things going on in the world. And I think as a teacher and as a human, it's just easy to forget those things. And so I would say breaking down the walls for the staff is just a reminder that the kids coming into your class every day, they have stories. And it's good to remember that they have a story outside your classroom and that story can affect how they show up in your classroom every day.
Yeah. Alicia, your thoughts on adult-student relationships and how that fits into this larger social emotional learning picture?
Sure. I was struck by Pete's comments when he was describing right after breaking down the walls, observing a lot of the behaviors and feelings and ways of relating that are part of the vision that it sounds like he had for the school. And those were immediate consequences of kids having that opportunity to surface how they're feeling, what their experiences are, and to connect with one another, but also to adults. What I imagine happens often, the relief of sharing those feelings with others, seeing you're not alone, seeing, hey, there's a pattern here, there's a theme that many people are experiencing. And so thinking about this event, not as a one and done, but as part of that, an opportunity to not only collect data, but to dramatically shift people's openness and readiness to why we need to implement a particular strategy. We need to invest the time and resources after and keep it up. And so if a school, whatever data they are using is coming to this conclusion, we have an area that we really need to build. We had a baseline understanding before we did an intervention. We had these rich, meaningful conversations that affirmed that, or they gave us better understanding from students' perspectives, explanation of, what are the causes of some of the feelings that our community has. There's a component of breaking down the walls that I think is a very time-honored type of strategy, which is building peer-to-peer support and leadership and thinking about not only the intention that goes into who are we selecting, how are those students really well positioned to change the norms in the school? And then the great part of the bigger picture of this, the cycle of school climate improvement, is that once you've implemented that strategy and you've kind of seen, how much did we stick with the plan we had? How high was the fidelity that we had? There's always challenges that come in that, can make implementation difficult. That using an instrument like a school climate survey, again, or other local forms of data, or even follow-up conversations and focus groups. Where are we 6 months after we did breaking down the walls? Where are we a year later? Having those data to be able to monitor has this had a long-standing effect? Who has it had a long-standing effect for? If there are groups that are left out, how do we intentionally reach them the next time we do this through design or through other, approaches that we may build in as part of this effective systems level process that ideally is driven by data like the NJ Sky survey that we use here in New Jersey.
Yeah. So, Alicia, I want you to share some of those resources with me, and whatever you send me, will be glad to post on our website for this episode so people listening to this can go and learn about some of those resources. Jason, I gather, you've had a chance to actually talk with Alicia offline, and I'm sure you're learning some things from her, but are there things that you are doing or could be doing in terms of your conversations with school leaders at the end of this that might help them understand what they can do to sort of track climate over time, or things they can do to complement what's happened during these workshops?
Yeah, one of the things that we hear a lot of is how do we continue the work that happens at breaking down the walls? Mm-hmm. And we are no longer on the campus once we are done for the week. Now we have some other programming and things we offer to support schools, but we've really shifted in the last, I would say, a year and a half to a place of empowering student leaders, those big elephants, to take ownership of actions they can take on campus to make it feel different, to make it feel a little more connected. Alicia used the word norms earlier. I like the word norms when it comes to school culture. Like, your school has norms. And so how do you change a norm? One person doing something doesn't change a norm. It takes a group of people to change a norm. And so those student leaders, those big elephants, there's not a better group of people on a campus to create a new norm than those group of student leaders. So in our training day, we talk about, hey, start thinking about in another week, what is something this group can do on your campus to create a little connection or bring a little energy to your campus? Some schools will have like a little breaking down walls reunion at lunch. They'll meet all their little small groups at lunch sometimes. We have some do a mix it up lunch. We'll have people do a high five Friday and just play music and give people high fives and create some energy. We've had another school make like a club, essentially is what it is, that follows up with this. Other schools have different groups like Link Crew. Link Crew was also started by Phil Boyd, who started breaking down the walls. They'll use Link Crew leaders in their ASB, and they'll come together and create a plan of how we continue to build on the momentum of breaking down the walls. So we've shifted to a place of just really trying to empower those student leaders to take ownership of the next step.
So the last thing I do as we bring this to a close, I want to just play one more clip from Samantha. She was the second student we heard from, because I asked her, this recent graduate from high school, what could school leaders do? What could teachers do to make to bring down the walls, to keep the walls as low as possible? And this is what Samantha said.
Administration can do a lot to make the environment itself easier for children to open up. Some children have never had a positive experience with authority. With that being said, I feel like administration could be that positive experience. And you can always tell who those children are: the children who talk back, the children who don't stop talking. I think it's really easy to pass certain children off as, oh, he's just bad, he's just like that. Instead, sit down and have a conversation with that child. It could be the first conversation an adult has ever had with him. So I think things like that are very important. And if I myself didn't have teachers who did that for me, I don't think that I would be where I am today. My first positive experiences were with adults in school, principals, teachers, things like that. I had a teacher in high school buy me winter clothes because she noticed that I'd walk to school without a sweater. So I think creating and cultivating that relationship in the classroom, of course, that's where it starts. But when it really affects you inside, you take that out of the classroom.
Alicia, I think that echoes just what you were talking about, is adults learning to pause and to take a moment to talk with the student, rather than thinking, my job is to teach algebra and they're going to come in here and they either get it or they don't. But, if I see a student coming in like the angry student, is just to open up and make an invitation to talk in the way that Samantha was talking about. Was, for her, it was, she had no other adult relationships that were safe and healthy. And so I gather that's a really important thing that adults can do.
I agree. And I think the more there are those programs and practices in place that make that routine and normal, to take that pause and to engage as an adult and know that you have the support and the resources to be able to make a positive difference, and that that's viewed and rewarded as part of your job, goes back to the beginning of the comment I think that she made about the importance of administrators and the leaders of the building. The leadership teams are, who we work with to push these levers once we see what the needs are, but you could think of them as the biggest elephants in the room in a good way, because they are communicating and modeling and engaging in the behaviors that they hope that their staff will. And again, recognizing, rewarding that student support piece as much as they're looking at growth in outcomes and some of the other look-fors that they have when they go into classrooms and they provide that bigger picture and that bigger support for the building. And I think the importance of, for adults across the board, but especially leaders, to walk the walk and to, put their money where their mouth is, if you want to use that expression, is so important. And again, for each individual person to be able to build strong relationships with each other and to thrive and pursue, their hopes and dreams and reach their potential.
Thank you, Alicia. Jason, just a reaction to what you heard from Samantha.
Well, I know Alicia said this earlier, is there are a lot of demands on schools and administrators, especially when it comes to like testing data, things like that. And I think one of the shifts that could happen in schools is for administrators to go, you know what would happen to our school, including our test scores, if we invested more time in facilitating connections among our students? And I'll give you an example from my world. Again, this is one of those moments as an educator that changed me. As an assistant principal and stuff like this, I always walked around and told everybody, stand at your door, greet kids. That's how you build relationships. And somewhere along the way, I became an activities director at the largest high school in Oklahoma. And one of our leadership teachers had to step away from leadership class in October of that year because she was teaching AP Lang and it was just too much. And so I took over the leadership class. And what I did is I really focused on me facilitating conversation between kids, kind of like we do in Breaking Down the Walls, but I did it in the classroom. And at the end of the year, a senior came up and said, "Hey, Mr. J, your enrollment's about to explode." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "I've never been in a class that's this connected." And when he said that, there was a lot of heads nodding yes in the room. And I was like, okay, we're onto something here, that kids feel connected to the classroom. And so if I could go back and teach chemistry again, if I had an administrator give me permission to invest time in facilitating relationships between kids, but also to help them learn content, man, I would have been a way better chemistry teacher. And so what do I mean by that? One of the things I did is I would give every kid 5 unique handshake partners every 9 weeks. And when they would come in on a Monday, I would say, "Hey, you're going to go hop up and go find your sea lion partner." And we do this little sea lion handshake. And I would just say, "Hey, taller person first. You got 30 seconds. Talk about the highlight of your weekend." And then we pause. We'd let maybe the shorter person talk for 30 seconds. We're going to go get our second partner, do a similar question. And then the third partner will say, "Hey, let's do this. The taller partner, you get to go first. Tell your partner what we did in class last week. What did we do in chemistry last week? What do you remember?" Right? And you give the shorter partner a chance. So what we did there is over maybe 10 minutes, we got kids up talking to each other. The first thing we did is people before professionals. We got them to connect as human beings first, but then we shifted to content. So now every kid in the room is having a chance to talk about the content we did in class last week. And I think that's a huge opportunity for schools, for classrooms, for teachers, but really it starts with administrators going, "Hey, it's okay to invest time in facilitating connections between your kids, because there's also can be an academic benefit of that." And I think that is something right now that's missing in a lot of schools. We get scared that we're losing class time, but I think that investment on the front end, actually, you'll get more benefit in the end than you would without doing those things.
And I could imagine doing everything you recommended that would happen, say, in a chemistry class, doing that with faculty themselves. right? I mean, you come into a faculty meeting, we're going to take 10 minutes to have you randomly walk around, meet with someone and talk about something that happened in your class today that made a difference for someone, or talk to someone at a different grade level about why you decided to become a teacher, and experience that yourself as staff members, and then say these same things that we're doing together with each other to support each other, and to remember that we are colleagues, we're in this together, part of a team. Those are things you can do, and I hope you will do in your classroom. We have to model it and experience it and remind ourselves how important it is to break down walls, even among ourselves in a school building. Well, I want to thank both of you, Jason and Alicia, for joining me today and to talk about breaking down the wall. So thanks so much to both of you. Alicia, thank you.
Thank you. I loved the conversation and I appreciated being a part of it.
Yeah, Jason, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ken, and thank you, Alicia. It's always great to get to connect and learn, and I appreciate that opportunity to hear and speak with both of you today, and then learn more about both your work and what Alicia's doing in New Jersey.
And I also want to thank the two students, Valerie and Samantha, for their participation. Thanks also to Mike Walsh, Mike Tutucci, and Debbie Hawkins. You can find this and all of our episodes of Courageous Conversations at schoolconversations.org and on your favorite podcasting platforms. If you like this episode, please be sure to share it with others who might enjoy it as well. So long, everyone.